Those people who are used to living in their rigid setups are finding it very difficult now. And therefore it can be said with absolute certainty that from around 2012, probably for about 30 years until 2040, there will be a time when parts of the earth will be very bad, they will experience wars, cataclysms, problems, and so on, but some parts will be very good. They went to their Bali, to Fangan, wherever they went, to Mexico, to the jungles, to shamans and so on, and they are enjoying themselves. Everything is good for them. Yes, and people of the old formation look at them and ask, how can you be happy when there are wars, epidemics, earthquakes, COVID, crises, the dollar, all of this is starting. Let it begin, Lord. Well, that's good. If not this way, then that way. Today this way, tomorrow another way. If we remove all esotericism and just look with our eyes at happy people and unhappy people, a happy person now in 2024 is someone who tries, experiments, acts, and conducts experiments on life. An unhappy person is someone who is stubborn and says, I am a lawyer, I must be a lawyer, and I will be that way. And this is where disasters and difficult events will occur to pull a person out of their familiar environment, simply forcing them to change their worldview, where, by starting to overcome and making these spiritual feats, they will finally be able to break free from their old setups. Some will not be able to, and indeed we will see that a large number of people are ending their incarnation. All these COVIDs, wars in different parts of the world, this is precisely about people who have decided to remain old. It's no longer possible to stay in this. The time has come to transition.
Darkness, as suffering, as some evil forces, it is something subjective that remains in a person's life if they choose to develop not voluntarily, so to speak. Well, I want to develop, but forcibly. That is, if he continues to stumble over his own stumps and ignores them, then there will be darkness and suffering in his life.
One needs to understand, that it's not the heavy barbell, but I am weak. The sooner a person realizes that I am weak and needs to become stronger, the faster they will transition to the bright side. The longer they say that the barbell is heavy, that the prices are high. It's not that I earn little because I am a low-level professional, that I am not needed, that I am not in demand. It's all their fault. The sooner a person takes responsibility for what is happening in their life, because no matter how difficult the events are, even in 1941, someone was sent on an expedition to the Amazon in January, meaning they sat in that expedition for 5 years and returned back to Europe, realizing that there was a war. That is, he didn't even understand what was happening, because the individual path of the soul's development is still more important. And at any moment, we will find a person who, right here and now, despite some difficult events, is experiencing the best moment of their life. For some it's war, for others it's their motherland. Who said, finally, I got the chance to go through this experience.
What 5D is, I finally understood. It's a time of probabilities where you can do something differently, where change is necessary. And then the question is, what will happen to those people who will not change right now in our time? What kind of life awaits them?
Depending on the accumulated good karma, they will live for some time and then die. The others will also live and die. There are no questions about that. It's just that for some, this death will come quite quickly because, well, that's it. You don't correspond to the times. You know how, well, if your company, for example, stopped producing guitars and started making drums, and you can do nothing but tighten strings, you will be fired. And it's the same here. If the planet needs people with different qualities, and you say, but I don't want to make drums, I want to tighten strings. Okay, no problem, just not here. Let's go to another company. Transform yourself. Transform yourself, yes, into another state. You can transition. That's why there are now a huge number of, psychologists, teachers, and so on. I always compare this to the year 1917, when medicine experienced some colossal development and growth. Because after a huge amount of physical suffering, there appeared disabled people, disfigured individuals, sick people, and so on. And medicine had to make a qualitative step forward. Right now, if we look at people from a psychological perspective, we have exactly the same kind of disabled individuals, only emotional and personal. If we could view a personality as a disabled person after the trench warfare of World War I, then we are the same now. And that's why right now, I see it very clearly, Since the mid-2000s, new techniques, new practices, new methodologies are emerging. They are becoming increasingly sophisticated. So somewhere around the 70s, if you had a psychological problem, you would spend about 5 years with a psychoanalyst and it still wouldn't be certain. Now there are techniques such as regression, constellations, and many other methods that allow you to completely restructure a person in just 2 to 3, 4 sessions. And we are living in a moment when these technologies have arrived that allow us to transition, yes, not just to suffer, like you have to sort things out with yourself. Here are mental technologies, mental problems, emotional problems. Here is the solution. There wasn't such a task before, and that's why there weren't so many psychologists. Now, the soul has figured out how the body works, how to survive here, how it is very difficult to die of hunger and cold on this planet. You really have to go out of your way for that to happen. But the next task is, how do I do the same with my inner life? How do I bring it into order? And the world responded. It brought a large number of methods and so on. Therefore, there is no strict guideline for people who have not transitioned. Well, that is, what should a person do who is not getting treatment, who says, I will not take aspirin, I chewed oak bark, yes, that's it, my ancestors chewed oak bark, and I will chew oak bark. Well, you will probably die, yes, you probably won't be able to do it. The same will happen to a person who does not want to work on their inner world. Time has changed. Here you go, tools. You can practice by yourself, with a master, or in various ways, and so on. Try it. Everything is available for you. We have the internet. I want to say, come in. If you are really some kind of, I don't know, a poor person, there is an endless amount of free materials, free practices, get involved. I just remember very well how I, came to self-discovery around 2007, 2008 there. Were certainly a lot of materials already available. But there is such a variety that I can translate any master in any language using neural networks. Listen, practice. The whole world has opened up before a person. So to say, that a person hasn't transitioned, well, in this case, it's like the person is a fool. Well, here are all the options. The whole world is before you. Even for someone who earns 15,000 rubles, they can buy some Chinese balalaika for 3,000 rubles with internet access. Yes, and also get unlimited access for 300 rubles. Or at least, I don't know, go to a cafe with Wi-Fi and sit there. That's it. You have all the opportunities. Headphones for 300 rubles, a phone for 3,000 rubles. What else do you need? What else do you need for development? You don't need to go on a retreat to India. You don't need to rush there and pay millions to the Dalai Lama. So what will happen to a person who, having all the opportunities, does not use them? Well, probably they are not very needed by this planet.
Friends, Alexei shares a lot of similar interesting information on his Telegram channel, specifically on the Telegram channel of his regression school. We will also leave all the links to other social networks under the video. Go ahead, get acquainted. What will happen to a specific person? We understood. They will most likely just switch off. And what is the earth waiting for, in general? Please tell me.
We have this interesting thing called freedom of choice. Some mistakenly call it free will, but let it be. And in general, the transition is still ongoing. And therefore how it will end is unclear. That is, people can choose their own future. And if the majority of people find themselves stuck in old programs, then we are facing global cataclysms all over the planet, which will lead to the destruction of a very large number of people and to the fact that a minority will then gradually establish the human race. But again, it seems to me that the majority of people have started to make this transition. A huge number of views are garnered by various videos related to self-discovery and self-development. Therefore, there will be two simultaneous processes globally. That is, on one hand, those people who do not want to live well will gather in specific countries, in specific places where such difficult events are already beginning. And conversely, other people who have a more authorial life position, who are creators, will also cluster in different places. And here we always have various paths open to us. If we have gathered many good people in one place, then even if there is initially some accumulated negative energy, it will all pass by tangentially. For example, one needs to experience the loss for the soul. For someone, this will be the loss of limbs. Sorry for such a harsh example. While someone else might just go and get an unfortunate haircut and lose their beautiful hairstyle. Unpleasant? Yes, unpleasant, but not fatal, and therefore we will undoubtedly go through the experience of confronting ourselves. But the more a person resists changes and transformations, the harder it will hit them. There are cultures and peoples that tend to linger in the past, reflecting on how good it used to be and how bad everything is now. And for them, everything will get worse. These are those who, without naming anyone, are convinced of their original, divine, infallible origin. That is, for many people and many nations, this does not apply. The religions of countries are simply believed by people, while there are others who say, yes, my ancestors were wonderful, they were magnificent, they lived as they lived, but I live my life, and it's time for me to create something new. And in those places where creators will gather, who, on one hand, respect the past but do not try to carry it into the future, there will be prosperity. Those who try to return things to how they were in the old days, saying let's bring it back as it was, will gradually degrade and move towards destruction. And here we can see that the planet will begin to divide into a huge, huge number of sectors. It was like this. It doesn't even matter how it was, all at once and with everyone. And against everyone. That is, I can be friends with you somewhere here, while in some things I can compete with you. In other words, we can be friends during the interview, but at the same time compete for the same girl. And we need to simultaneously accept each other as two people, but still win by conquering that very beloved one whom one of us will choose.
One does not exclude the other.
Exactly. And those people, what will happen? There will be a lot of such stories, like he is neither good nor bad, he is neither an enemy nor a friend. Here we are friends, here we compete, and those who can combine this within themselves will move to the next level of cooperation. We don't need to compete. There are many girls, there are many interview channels, there is a lot in this world. And this will be the next stage, I think somewhere after 2042, when humanity will understand that it will finally understand that there is an abundance of everything. In abundance of air, in abundance of food, in abundance of goods from AliExpress, in abundance of apartments, cars, and so on. Everything is in abundance. Yes, the question is only that we start to cooperate and everyone would do their best. Therefore, I think that in the next 20-25 years, there will be a period of very harsh fragmentation where there will be no clear friend, no clear enemy. And then we will all understand that all people are different with their own strengths and weaknesses. And coming to terms with this, we will learn to cooperate and establish what is called, a union of leaders. This is, if we take spiral dynamics, a level of, a matrix structure. I worked in such an environment, when a brilliant salesperson, a brilliant marketer, a brilliant producer, some brilliant advertiser come together. None of them is the boss of the others. No one is more important, but together they create something that each of them could not create alone. That is, I am not the boss, the leader who hired a team and is now giving orders like a pyramid where I kick everyone below from the top. We are all leaders.
An organization equals?
Yes, an organization not just of equals, but of equal leaders. Each is already a professional in their field, each is excellent at their level, and no one is the boss of anyone. This is precisely the matrix, and this matrix is what awaits us in about 20 years. The faster, and by the way, we are talking about humanity as a whole, but the faster each individual comes to this, the faster humanity will make its transition. Those who want to do things the old way, those who do not want to cooperate, those who want to manage, command, and give orders, will be left out. That is most likely they will have their own enclaves. There is always hard, tough work. The planet Earth still provides a huge amount for suffering. Here it is basically the planet where there is death. This is basically a planet where suffering will always exist, but it will be perhaps 10, 15%, maybe even 5%. And there may be individual people who will create and maintain this low vibration, but the task of the majority is to transition to a level of cooperation.
Many masters say that during this time of transition, the most frozen, reckless souls come to Earth. Like, Earth is a hellish meat grinder. Is it true that the bravest, most reckless souls have come here at this time?
On one hand, I want to say, what to compare it with, right? But on the other hand, if we take some other civilizations, like Orion civilizations, Pleiadian civilizations, where with many healers, many teachers, then, undoubtedly, compared to such civilizations, we are a meat grinder. And indeed, The bravest come here. But I think it's not just the bravest. Coming to planet Earth is a very cool story because we can live a vast amount of different experiences here. Somehow, you and I have ended up using a lot of sports metaphors. So, there are some monosports, so to speak, like skiing, where you have, I apologize to the skiers, well, like 3 movements, right? And then there are things like hero races, where you need to swim, run, do pull-ups, jump, dive into the mud, and so on. So, planet Earth, compared to other civilizations, is much more like a hero race, but at the same time, it offers more opportunities because, well, once again, no offense to skiers, but monosports are much calmer and more predictable. There is a clear set of movements that you need to refine. And when you have an explosion on the left, a cliff in front of you, mud pouring down on you, or something else happens, you become a more versatile fighter, a more universal master. And undoubtedly, if a person has already chosen to live on planet Earth, they have a demand for this versatility. So they decided to enhance themselves in all sorts of different areas. So yes, I can say that compared to other civilizations, Earth is a place of struggle, but it also offers a lot of opportunities. That is, a cat will always be a cat, a dog will always be a dog, but a person can become who knows what. He can become an awakened master, he can become a doctor, he can become a soldier, he can stop being human and realize a light body. A person has a huge number of different options and countless ways to go. Into magic, into ESP, into esotericism, simply again, without offending anyone, become a carpenter and work with wood using a knife. Therefore, the planet Earth provides so many opportunities and so many challenges that one can truly say that the brave ones, or those who think they are brave, I may think I am brave, I incarnated like that. Well, like many people who are in depression, yes, like mom. For me, there is my spiritual home where everything is fine, and so on. Yes, and this is indeed a large area that regression therapists work in. Yes, this depression, the longing for a lost home, the mystical experience of regression very quickly alleviates this longing. You know how? By understanding that I will definitely be there. Well, I will definitely die and find myself in the subtle world. Well, that's guaranteed. I have, how to say, the only thing that can be promised to any person is that he will die, no matter how cynical that may sound. If I understand that I will definitely die and definitely find my way home, I have so little time left, 20, 30, 40 years. Well, some live to 100, yes, perhaps the most extreme ones, but overall, 80 years. If you really immersed yourself in life between lives and felt this breath of infinity, it releases you. This infinity is always there. You will always return to this infinity. No one will live here indefinitely, and depression thus goes away. Therefore, many depressed people are precisely those who couldn't cope with this meat grinder. It was calm and good there, but here you have to move your hands and legs yourself and so on. The choice is up to each person.
And what do we come here for at all and go through all these experiences?
If we take the purpose of all people on this planet, we all have one single purpose, the revelation of our divine nature. Some will reveal this through music, some through sports, some through love for a woman or a man, some through creating a family or serving the homeland. These are all different aspects of the manifestation of the divine story. And at the very limit, our task is to remember ourselves as God, to remember who we truly are. How will we get there? Everyone has their own path. If God is infinite, there are infinite ways to know oneself, infinite ways to live this life. And here, if we take the previous step, 1, of the essential tasks of knowing our divine nature is to learn to feel ourselves, to learn to listen to our inner voice, to learn to hear our soul. Because on one hand, we have our social part, our ego. These are our, you could say, lower chakras, the first, second, and third, which say, I, me, mine. We have a spiritual part, which is the 5th, 6th, and 7th chakras, creativity, vision, divinity, and so on. But there is also what develops in the most amazing way right here on earth, which is the anahata. It is precisely between the earthly and the divine. And the ability to live and to reveal love within oneself On one hand, not to betray your body, to preserve it, but also not to betray your soul, this middle path that Buddha spoke of. Yes, not to fall into too much darkness, not too much light, not to become too fragrant. Yes, getting carried away with spirituality, but also not to fall into materialism, but to stay in the middle. This is, in essence, probably the greatest art of being human. That is, we are no longer animals, but we are not yet gods. We have not yet revealed our potential. And the ability to preserve your body while simultaneously preserving your soul is probably the key thing we are learning here. When we have learned this, then there is a direct path ahead, not easy, but quite straightforward, towards the realization of divine potential, the revelation of God within oneself. This is when true spirituality begins, when you are in neurosis. Then I worked on myself. I don't know how you felt good. And here, as a rule, a person forgets about God for a long time. Yet everything is fine. There is money, there are women, apartments, cars, there is great food, everything is good, life is joyful, the emotions are wonderful, everything is magnificent and blissful. You don't like this life because you don't know how to prepare it. Well, again, everyone can have their own joys. I call them stereotypical. But then I felt good. And I want to know even more about this goodness. From this moment on, one could say, the true acquaintance with God begins. Because before that, it was an escape from reality. And here, the spiritual connects with reality. I feel good in reality and good in the spiritual. And that's when the most delightful part begins.
If we are here to know our divine nature, then what or who can hinder us from achieving that?
If we are men, then laziness hinders us. If we are women, then hysteria hinders us. So, we hinder ourselves, and there is absolutely no force that prevents a person from being a good person. Therefore, a man hinders himself by not strengthening his will. A woman hinders herself by letting her emotions out. Too much. Yes, so again, women, don't misunderstand me. I'm not telling you to corner yourselves. And I do not forbid men to relax, but globally, the main problem for men is laziness, and the main problem for women is hysteria.
Are all lessons for the soul equal, or are there some that are the most important, some secondary, and some primary?
Good question.
Is there a specific lesson, a lesson that stands out?
Well, the most important lessons of the soul are usually related to getting to know oneself. That is, all that experience that allows me to know myself better is the main thing. What allows me to know the world better is usually secondary. And if any trials allow me to get acquainted with my fear, my weakness, my courage, my will, and so on, these will be the most important lessons. And then we can simply say that these lessons come more or less sequentially. We are still born with a level of survival, and our task is to ensure our physical safety is the first level, dealing with the body. The next level is emotions, fears, and experiences related to sexuality and contact with others. The third level of experiences, the third level of questions, relates to knowledge, will, intellect, and achieving one's goals. These are the social levels that most people address. Then comes the most challenging lesson, which means getting acquainted with one's soul, transitioning to the heart chakra, the opening of the anahata. This is the toughest transition, because if the first three levels are about my body, my emotions, my knowledge, my will, yes, my, that is where you still achieve something. Then you transition to being, so to speak. There is still growth before reaching being. But at the fourth level, I feel better from doing good for others. That is, I enjoy not when I receive a gift, but when I give a gift. I much prefer to give a gift.
Now I am cool because I give.
And there is no longer the thought, I am cool. Now I feel good because I give. Before, I felt good because I was cool, because I was strong, brave, because I defeated everyone. And here I feel good because all of you around me feel good. This is precisely the next level. But it is not the final one. Yes, you mentioned being, because if I make everyone around feel good, then the next level is the level of creativity. Can I give you something and create something that has not existed in the world yet? Manifest the unmanifested. And then I do good not just for you, but for someone else. I am starting to not so much change the world, but transform it. I create in it what potentially existed, but has not yet been manifested. You know, like 7 strings on a guitar, but someone plays a new melody. Potentially they exist in these 7 strings, but no one has extracted anything from these 7 strings in any other way, even though they have always existed. This is the next level, and after it, we move on to higher levels, such as the development of inner vision, the development of intuition, the level of, playing with these probabilities, like when I don't need to go to a regression therapist to change my fate. And I basically see how one flap of a butterfly's wing can lead to maximum changes, to some kind of tornado. And then, when I learn to interact with this subtle space at the level of vision, I precisely transition to revealing my divine nature, reaching the 7th level, the Sahasrara, and there, actually, I realize my purpose. For example, if a person tries to climb very high, without solving the tasks of the lower level, they will achieve results, but they will roll back. The world will still tell him, listen buddy, come on, resolve your issues with your masculinity. It's very nice to be spiritual, soulful, kind, gentle, and so on, but until you resolve your issues with masculinity, you won't rise higher. And still he says, what masculinity, what femininity? I am a divine genderless soul. He will be told, well, literally by the world, you were born in a male body, be kind. Figure out what a male body is before you were born in a female body, be kind, figure out what a female body is, and then the next levels will open up for you. And what do you think? We will all die, of course. Where will we go? But some will manage to remember themselves. For them, death will be like awakening, like waking up. Yes, when you wake up in the morning, you can look for something. Death can be seen as sleep. You can say that, yes, when you fall asleep, well, as a personality, you die at that moment. Of course.
Well, how does consciousness remain?
Yes, just not all know themselves as consciousness.
How can a person know themselves as consciousness?
Mystical experience.
Yes, this is it.
It happens.
Who is behind such an experience?
It happens. I've had it twice in my life, 3 times. 2.5, the experience of Satari, the experience of instant awakening. That is, there is a final enlightenment that happens to you, and that's it. You as a person have died. You are just an observer. And there is Satari. It's like, a gift from God for your suffering, for your perseverance. When you attain this state of awakening, it slowly starts to bring you back into society. It first happened to me in 2009 when I stopped being myself. It lasted for about a month, the first time. The second time it happened to me was in 2017. Both experiences were related to working with a mentor. And in 2017, my mentor made me maintain this state. When you sleep for 4 hours, you have no reaction. You just run around, create, build. You have a lot of strength, a lot of energy. Nothing affects you. Nothing offends you. You just observe everything that happens. The state of insight. And it's interesting, Our entry point into insight in the energy body is roughly the same as the point for releasing excess emotions. And if we look at different mystical practices, they are usually related to putting a person in the most uncomfortable conditions possible. That is, well, everyone has heard about the Zen stick, right, which the master strikes the student with at the right moment. Everyone has heard about different harsh abrialds and initiations when you are left naked somewhere at night in the forest, in the jungle, I don't know, with just a stick against a tiger and so on. And there it's 50-50. Either you, placed in your strongest fear, and when it feels like complete disaster, will either break through to this awareness, or you might lose your mind a little. Therefore, these are quite harsh practices, and it's better to approach them sufficiently prepared. This is the moment of transition, either everything ends, or, on the contrary, everything is just beginning. Either the end or birth, therefore, how to understand it. You don't need to understand it. You just are that. For some reason, many masters who have gone through this experience say that personality is not important. But from my point of view, observing a large number of people over the more than 20 years I've been in training, those who have trained with me and so on, it is very clear that the more harmonious a person's personality is, the easier it is for them to experience this mystical experience. Because the more fears, phobias a person has, the likelier to have a negative experience, which could lead to something like clinical death or other issues. But then the personality will bring him back. It's similar to the body. If I have a sick, heavy, problematic body with hormonal issues, I can meditate for a long time and I will certainly achieve high states, but the body will bring me back The personality is a more subtle structure than the body, but it also has similar properties. That is, you can leave. It's absolutely classic. You have probably experienced it. You go on a retreat. You disconnect from the world. Your personality does not interact with anyone. A huge amount of energy is pumped in. Consciousness rises. You feel all loving and joyful, driving back from this retreat.
Easy to wake in forest.
And immediately all sorts of goats, freaks, and idiots start cutting you off, being rude and so on, and you quickly return back. And this is just paralysis. All practices work. Everything is fine. But your personality does not yet hold this level of vibrations. Therefore, experiencing this is certainly interesting to finally remember that I am not just a personality, I am something more. But the body needs to be trained, taken to sports, and, in the same way, the personality also needs to be grown.
So, the personality is such a thing through which the spirit, God breaks into our world.
100%.
And we should not kill it, but simply make it as wide as possible so that it can let all this spirit through itself.
Yes. Then there will be a transcendence beyond the personality, but it will happen naturally.
How can I hear, how can I understand the tasks for which my soul came here? That is, it is clear that I am living now. I am currently living within my personality, which has its own social tasks. Personality, if it is a tool for adaptation in society, how can I, through this, a solid personality, to hear, to know the requests, desires, tasks from my soul?
If we talk about the social way, the simplest thing is to find, in this life, the most difficult and unpleasant tasks that one least wants to solve, and most likely, the solution lies precisely there. That is, if, for example, I have difficulty in relationships with women, and it seems to me that is if I think that all women are somehow crooked, and I need that one and only, then only by resolving the issue with women can I move to the next level. And there is a wonderful technology or technique or book. These are Tibetan practices called Where It Is Scary. The more actively a person studies the area where they are afraid, the faster they find their path and purpose. Because for people who have found their path, they have no more questions. Because what is one's path? One's path is a state that a person experiences in the process of some activity. And the question is, what is this state? This state is characterized by 4 verbs. I love, I can, I want, and I do. And if I love giving interviews in the moment, want to give interviews, I know how to give interviews. And I am giving one right now and love this activity, I feel like I am in my place. If we finish now, I will go, for example, to training. I love to train, I can train, I love, I want, and I am training right now. And here, a person usually has a problem with one of the 4 verbs. For example, I can and love to sing, but right now I don't have the opportunity. Or for example, I want to draw, and I even have brushes and paints, but I don't know how. And then, depending on what is lacking in a person who is already somewhat on their path, one can look. Maybe I lack skills and competencies, and I need to go to an artist or a master to learn. Maybe I would gladly work as a psychologist, but I lack some confidence, expressiveness, right? And I am afraid to assert myself, I am afraid to express my thoughts, and then I need to work on my desires. Maybe I would be ready, but something holds me back, some internal limitation to surrender to this flow of love, right? And to write this music with love. Conduct psychological consultations with love. After all, engage in sports with love. With love for your body, rather than torturing yourself in these workouts. And then for the first type of people to feel their soul, it is to go where it is scary. If you already feel more or less, see what you are missing, whether it is a skill that is lacking, a desire at the moment, a lack of love, or simply no opportunity. That is, maybe I know how to draw. And everything is great, but there are really no paints, no brushes, no canvas. There is no opportunity to express myself. And this also happens very often, and I often notice how people, when they find themselves in conditions where they can express themselves, literally say, so this is what life has prepared me for. Yes, I felt that way for the first time when I first went behind the scenes of the training business in 2010. When I entered the trainer's room and started communicating with those luminaries who were wow for me, I thought how high they sit, and I realized, here it is, where I can express myself. Many people feel the same way when they first enter a gym or attend a singing or painting workshop and so on. And in a sense, another point, if you don't know where to apply yourself, it's impossible to do it in theory. Open the list of free workshops on the website in your city, just walk around, take a look, your soul will resonate with something. Again, in the end, a simple example about sports. I know a bunch of people who tried several dozen sports before starting their own. I know a person who says he got tired of boxing and wants to practice Aikido. Aikido doesn't work for him. He says, maybe weightlifting doesn't work, maybe CrossFit, CrossFit is a cool continuation of my boxing. And he would never have known about it if he hadn't attended a workshop in his city. Therefore, workshops are also one way to find your path.
Friends, these were a couple of tips on how to start moving towards your soul. And I remind you that Alexei has social media on Telegram and VKontakte. You can check out similar information, so we will leave all the links below the video. Go ahead and get acquainted. The next question is one that has personally interested me for a long time, and thank God you came, so I can ask you. Please tell me, what is déjà vu?
We just talked in detail about the fifth dimension, and actually déjà vu is the moment when you transition to another branch of reality within your own reality. That is, just a moment ago, it was your fate to, lose all your money and health, something happened inside you, and you walk and realize, you catch the moment of déjà vu, and your future, your branch of reality starts to change. That is, some part of your personality, your part, I don't even know, your soul will live that branch where it is indeed. Your fate to lose money and health, but you yourself have transitioned to a reality where you will acquire money and health and maybe even multiply it. And this moment of shifting, branches of reality, if we take the concept of God, encompasses all possible probabilities. All possible probabilities. This is already the 10th dimension, so moving within the 5th dimension feels like déjà vu.
That is, it is a certain point where something is done.
Change of fate.
Another choice, right?
The choices have all happened. Reality is changing. You have changed, but the reality may still be old. And this moment of transitioning from the old reality to the new reality is perceived as déjà vu. That is, you simultaneously see this and the next, and you have the feeling that you have seen this before, or maybe you haven't. And this state, this moment of transition.
Sometimes it happens that you meet a person and you either have a very positive attitude towards them or a very negative one, right at such a level that it feels like I have known him for a long time and I clearly remember what a jerk he is, or I have known him for a long time and I really enjoyed talking to him. Is this somehow related to the fact that we might have met somewhere, communicated in past lives? Does it have any relation?
As a regression therapist, I can say that it definitely does. We definitely recognize a person from a past life if we have met them. Moreover, we recognize them primarily by their eyes. That is, I understand that I have seen those eyes before. And further, the big problem is that in front of you is already a different personality, but you still relate to them as if they are the old personality. And you start projecting your experiences onto this person who has no relation to that old personality. This often happens with couples when a husband and wife meet in the future. He recognizes her, she recognizes him, but they do not know each other. So I remember that in a past life you were my mother, you remember in a past life that I was your son, we remember that we were happy together, but as real, say, Ivan and Maria, we are not acquainted. And here, in regression, a significant amount of work will be related to playing out those scenarios and finally getting to know each other in reality. It often happens when people have completed the scenario from a past life and worked through the karmic story. Who even looks at Maria. Something is off. And Maria says, oh, so this is who you are. So you are Ivan, not my son after all. And they scatter. And this is also good for many because they were indeed drawn together by old energies. But sometimes it's the opposite. It's a really cool story when people remove their projections, finally recognize who is in front of them, and are able to fall in love. And this, of course, is cool. And then what is called the second honeymoon begins. And I would generally say that, well, almost 100% of couples are karmic pairs who recognize each other. And if you had a second honeymoon in your relationship when you met, I congratulate you. You have worked through your karma to the end, seen each other as you truly are, and have experienced true love. Because before that, it was all just your fantasies about what could have been. If you didn't know all the other things, psychology, various spiritual teachings,
Let me put it another way.
The regression method by Alexei Kreuter includes everything that Alexei Kreuter has studied and integrated throughout his life, because we have the basics, and there is an advanced course. And for example, in the advanced course, we teach how to combine regression, constellations, for instance, regression and coaching. You have such a holistic regression, yes. And how? How so? How else? That is, everything that works naturally integrates into regression. In other words, no method contradicts another. I have been practicing regression hypnosis for the last 13 years. We have a very large school, and we conduct a large number of different experiments and trance immersions. In particular, we study the world and how it is structured using this. These are not my personal insights from my head, but rather the immersion of a large number of people, and an attempt to consolidate this information. We have a process in the regression school of immersion in the life between lives, which is precisely this subtle space, and there we ask the most interesting questions about humanity, about the structure of the world, and so on, not just about ourselves. Additionally, we have a process called Vangovani, which is a bit of a joke. When we immerse the most hypnotizable participant, the other participants ask them their questions. It is very interesting how a person who is not familiar with you, not a clairvoyant, not Baba Vanga, not mesmer, simply entering this trance state, begins to provide answers from the space, in general, incredibly accurate. If we look at the world as if there is only our individual consciousness, it is hard to understand or imagine where this old woman's information comes from in her head. Therefore, we should not assume that there is only our individual consciousness. This means the previous theory is incorrect. Yes, it does not match the facts, as I invented in Suplanare the Vang happen process, and Stuplang says, as I invented the Vangas process. If we consider that communication with mentors is something real and that there are indeed soul mentors, then essentially what difference does it make who communicates with the mentor, whether I communicate myself or my partner, if this is a real space? And then a person who, here is an absolutely real story from Ufa, not far from Kazan. When we conduct this process in a live training session in the hall, and a participant who acts as a conduit, another participant talks about their purpose. She says, I see that your purpose is related to sense. I say, I don't understand what that means, right? Your mentor shows me sense. And this is happening right before my eyes. Her eyes widen, and she responds, saying that I have a passion for aromas, oils, and perfume. This is my passion that I have never shared with anyone. I feel a bit shy about it. And here, a person I don't know at all tells me that this is my purpose. And anything you want, just do it. There are thousands of such cases. Just thousands, not hundreds, not dozens, but thousands. It is clear that working with sense is a higher level. It is a higher monadic level. Very few are given this ability, and she can create these selective aromas, engage in this, and the main thing is to believe in herself. Is the conduit really a conduit? In the sense of some spiritual conduit? We take the most hypnotizable in regression school and conduct a group process for 8 to 10 people. We immerse the most hypnotizable, moving from a past life into the space between lives, between incarnations. And there, in this space of the soul, they engage in something before incarnation. And there are soul mentors, somewhat like teachers in our school. So he becomes a conduit, right? The very hypnotizable one. Yes, and he can communicate with the mentor. It doesn't matter to him with whom, because in this space, there is everything. There is everything. Everyone in the circle can ask him, and he answers, yes. The most difficult part here is to find a conduit who will not distort the information with their ego. That is, the more developed a person is, the conduit should be purer. Yes, the purer, the more accurately the answer is given. I watched videos of other masters, regression specialists, and it was clear that the person, the master, was not talking about any spiritual experience, but was literally directly bringing their own issues into this regression. Here, it is important to understand that we always go into regression with ourselves, meaning we filter all the information through ourselves. And it seems that a person received neutral information, which is always neutral in the subtle world. There is neither life nor death there. Everything simply exists. And when we start projecting something that can scare us onto the subtle world, it definitely works through our personality. That is, for example, if a loving person immerses themselves in the space of the subtle world, they will talk about love, happiness, goodness, and positivity. Although the information is neutral, it is not about love, it is simply a set of facts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But he will filter it through himself and see in it some spiritual divine intention. If a person has a large amount of unresolved issues, fears, experiences, doubts, I see a lot of such comments in the comments section, like there are malicious comments about the subtle world. I definitely understand that it is better for these people not to go there for now, because by receiving neutral information, they will color it with the hues of their personality. If I have an unresolved personality, full of doubts, full of horrors, full of anxieties, I and everything around me will color it with myself. Therefore, undoubtedly, the more developed and neutral the channel, the more clearly he will receive information. And again, in this sense, we know that such main, prophets, messengers, just holy people, are those whose personality is very much erased. There is practically no personality there. In a sense, one could even say that they are ruthless. They present information as it is, not trying to smooth out the edges, not trying to dull the colors. They simply are and exist. Therefore, as a rule, we are all human, we all have access. There is still a subtle space for everyone. It is better if several people ask the same question. And then, by isolating each personality, removing it from the equation, we can obtain neutral information about what was actually said. And this is exactly when we do group immersions in regression school, I say, guys, talk to different channels, try to find the answer to your question from Masha, from Seryoja, and from Petya. Most likely, the pure and neutral information you receive from 3 people will be the truth. And different emotional assessments are precisely the projection of personality. The projections themselves are also a part of you. It is not something separate from yourself. Where there is you, your unconscious, and your projection separately, it is all one. Everything is interconnected. And therefore, if you or a client, while observing their projections, experiences certain feelings, they can be worked with. For example, I look at the castle and I feel scared. I look at the house and I feel scared. I look at the cave and I feel scared. What does this mean? It means that the image of a dwelling evokes some anxious feelings in me. And then it is necessary to understand where these anxious feelings about the dwelling originated and what to do with them so that they do not trouble me. That is, it could be, a client who comes in and says that they cannot buy their own home. Either scammers deceive me or the roof will collapse or something else. I am very eager to build my house, but I can't manage it. And in regression, he will see, you could say, energetically, that there is some dwelling, and there is his fear of this dwelling. There may be some projection in the sense that he may not understand. It will be a castle, it will be a cave, it will be a hut, but the experience itself is genuine, meaning that he, looking at all these images, experiences, all of this. And then we can discharge the experience in regression, diving into the root, and then these images will simply be images for him. A castle is a castle, a cave is a cave, that's it, period. And the fact that I impose that a castle is dangerous, a cave is dangerous, as a consequence the subtle world is dangerous, that is mine, and this is exactly what needs to be worked on in regression. There is a rewriting of the relationship to some experience. That is, there was some negative experience and throughout life you live with it, and all this time it constantly resonates. So here you were scared, there you were scared. And with the help of regression, there is a change in attitude, so to speak, transformation. Yes, because I don't like the term rewriting, because rewriting is when we erase an old memory, but instead we put in a new one. I've heard that the brain doesn't work that way. It kind of builds on, like transforms, but doesn't rewrite. A truly genuine recording does not transition for one simple reason. Why is global rewriting unnecessary? In this world, there is everything. God created both the wolf that eats the rabbit and the rabbit that is eaten by the wolf and the grass that the rabbit eats. Everything is in it. When I enter regression with the aim of rewriting, I say, Lord, you are wrong, you made up some nonsense. Let me erase the wolf that eats the rabbit right now and make it so that rabbits run around and fill the entire planet. It's like by rewriting my experiences, I am going against the will of the Almighty. I am saying that my ego, my personal perception of the world, is the most correct. And what happens to us in regression? In regression, we transform our perception. That is, what upset and distressed me becomes normal on an inner level. And maybe I don't want to be in the place of the rabbit. Maybe I don't want to be in the place of the wolf. I am a human. I live my destiny. But to accept as a fact that in this life there is birth and death, and everyone will die, and I will die, and all my loved ones will die, and all the wonderful rabbits will someday die. Yes, and wolves will also die of hunger. This is actually very hard. And it is precisely the people who are not ready to accept that there are different shades in this world, including very harsh and very spiritual ones, that lead to what is called spiritual materialism. When I start rewriting everything in my own way, it seems to me with my small, limited mind, and our human mind is always very much limited, we begin to deny the divine in everything that is happening. And as a consequence, it starts to fly over us even more strongly. Because like I rewrote everything, the wolf didn't eat the rabbit. Do you know what example I had? When a spear hits a man with overwhelming force for certain actions and pierces his liver, and he imagines that at the last moment he caught this spear and deflected it to the side. And so what happens? What is the problem with such rewriting? Listen, the hole in the liver remains energetically. It stays. Secondly, he literally falls to the ground here in the city on the third day and tears his muscles in that place. And the most important thing is that by rewriting, he is working with the consequence. In other words, he somehow planted certain karmic seeds. He behaved in a certain way, which naturally resulted in the spear that pierced his liver. This is natural. And essentially, what does he say when rewriting? I can behave like a jerk, I can violate spiritual laws, I can, betray, be a scoundrel and so on, and nothing will happen to me for it. So I am indeed the most intelligent, I successfully deflected the liver. In regression, we look at what I originally did that naturally resulted in my death from this spear. And then, as a rule, we find the root situation where usually a child or some unconscious action seals a certain fear, a certain guilt, a certain resentment in the unconscious. And then the following happens. The hurt others. If I feel hurt inside, I couldn't, like animals bite each other, then they shake it off and run on, forgetting everything. They are all good. As a species, as humans, we often seal these feelings within ourselves. So someone, called him by someone else's name, and he got offended, and he lives with this offense his whole life. And since, as we already talked about projection, he projects his offense onto the people around him, he sees that everyone around him is hurting him, even though it is his own offense from some insignificant event. As a result, all of this starts to snowball. When we go to the root and indeed forgive the offender, instead of rewriting, learning occurs. And a person begins to see clearly that if I got offended, I received all the negative consequences. If I forgave, I received all the positive consequences. And then two branches of reality turn out to be parallel, and a person can choose. And this is precisely the true essence of regression, when we give a person the opportunity to choose, to live this way, to live that way, to live however you want. If you behave resentfully, you will be hurt. If you behave kindly and acceptingly, the world will interact with you in the same way. Our unconscious, all our unconscious reactions, are not meant for us to be happy, joyful, and cheerful. The unconscious does not wish us well. The task of the unconscious is singular, to survive. If I was hurt at some point and it allowed me to survive, for example, I run to my mom and she yells at me, why am I getting hurt? To encounter my mom less often, because she yells it hurts me a lot, and I don't want to experience that pain. So my sealed hurt is my way of surviving. And the task of the unconscious is to ensure that your body, my body, the bodies of our viewers live longer. Whether you are happy, unhappy, suffering, or enjoying life, that is not the concern of the unconscious. Therefore, it seals survival strategies that may no longer be relevant after 30 years. And regression is precisely a way to get rid of those strategies that are no longer needed. That mom is no longer there. That yelling is no longer there. After all, maybe she wasn't yelling at herself. Maybe she came home from work. She worked at a factory. There were very loud sounds. And she came home and spoke very loudly. The child got scared. That is, some events happened to you in childhood. Perhaps they weren't even that bad. You might have misinterpreted them. But in the end, you accumulated various survival programs that are now irrelevant and lead you to real suffering in this adult life. And it is precisely with the help of regression that they can be transformed. Do new programs come in place of the old ones? Because in my experience, without regression, I had the situation where I was disappointed with the old programs, meaning I couldn't live the old way anymore. But the brain also doesn't know how to live the new way. And there was a complete disorientation for several years, like what, where, how to respond, how to speak, how to react, because you don't react that way anymore, and there is no reaction at all. And in the case of regression, how does this happen? Inside any trauma lies a resource. By releasing the resource, this adequate reaction to the situation automatically appears absolutely correct. And this is exactly what all the graduates say, that when you understand that there is a resource behind any trauma, at some point you start looking for these traumas, like a hunter for resources. Because by obtaining an absolutely precise tool for transforming this, it simply becomes a matter of technique. I don't know, there are series, I don't know, there are series, I don't know, there are series, I don't know, there are series. a person decided to go into manifestation. This is a very common problem among psychologists. He starts to go into manifestation and people begin to criticize him in comments or elsewhere, calling him a fool and questioning his worth. Many people unconsciously fear this. But if I know for sure that I was hurt in the comments, I can understand what affected me, go to a psychologist, restore the resource, go back to the comments, and understand that I accept the person as they are. Well, he has such an opinion, that's fine, I have a different opinion. This can be literally called, a hunter for fears. What else triggers me, right? Are there any other difficult moments in my life? Because regression is precisely a way to find these resources. So you kind of gather all your sealed super abilities? Yes. Stop, that's a very good metaphor, because it's all there, it just hides behind this ailment. Yes, you don't see it, you dive in, uncover it, and in the end, you take back everything that you had since creation. I would even say not just from birth, but from creation. And he departed from his divine nature. So here, regression wonderfully connects Eastern mysticism and Western psychology, because we believe that a person is inherently beautiful and magnificent. And there is no need to teach anyone love, there is no need to teach anyone wisdom, acceptance, nobility, honor, and conscience. These are all our internal states that for some reason we have sealed somewhere that we are holding on to. Moreover, I can say that if a person initially did not have this love, he would never seek it. Yes, that is, if I have never tasted mango, I am unlikely to sit and long for it, like, damn, I want to try mango, no longing. But if I understand that somewhere there is my peace, somewhere my happiness, somewhere my tranquility, somewhere my love, I know that I had it and I want to get it back. This is where the spiritual search begins, that I have strayed too far from what rightfully belongs to me. Friends, if you want to start the journey of restoring lost resources and recreating your integrity, Alexei has free video lessons. Please tell us what these lessons are and where they can be found. Look, you can find these lessons through the link. We recorded them specifically so that a person could practice before regression, because trance immersion is a skill. For example, we are both athletes, and we know that before engaging in any specific sport, one must first focus on general physical training, that is, to bring oneself into shape overall. Warm up, feel your body, stretch your joints, jump, squat, do nothing special. And when your body is in shape, you can engage in martial arts or other sports. The same goes for regression. In order to achieve a good regression, a person needs to learn to enter a trance state, that is the state between sleep and wakefulness. And in order to learn to enter a trance state, you don't need to go to the best trainer or anyone at all. This can be done independently. Just as anyone can do a warm-up, stretch their joints and muscles and warm up, anyone can start performing trance exercises to discover how the process of entering the unconscious happens for them personally. And we specifically recorded a set of 4 lessons for this purpose, which includes 3 warm-up techniques for entering trance and a group regression, which is the 4th lesson. And a person will be able to at least observe whether they are relaxing or not, how it happens for them, maybe one way, maybe another. And the most important thing is that they can practice an infinite number of times. And we, noticed while working in regression, not just me, but also my colleagues regressologists, that when a person has a good trance skill, specifically a skill they have trained, they achieve, 148% results in regression. It's clear that you can't have more than 100%, but nevertheless. And when a person, for example, lives very much in their mind, is not used to meditating, and is accustomed to controlling everything, yes, they have a very rigid consciousness, they achieve significantly less in regression than they could. And this does not depend on the regressologist, nor on the technique or methodology. It is simply their undertraining in trance skills. And the metaphor with sports is absolutely valid. That is, if we take a professional athlete and put them in a new sport, they will show very good results there, because they are used to interacting with their body. And just like that, people who have practiced yoga, meditation, reflection, and self-discovery, when they come to a regressologist, achieve 100% results. And this can be done by simply downloading the lessons for yourself and practicing with them. Then you will achieve the maximum results in regression. Thank you for coming. Thank you for clarifying many slippery, speculative questions on YouTube. Finally, clarity has been brought. I remind you, friends, that Alexei has free video lessons on how to start working on yourself using regression. We will leave the links below the video. Go ahead and get acquainted, and thank you very much. Thank you for the great surveys. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. See you again.